My name is Isabelle McConville, and I am a bookseller and producer here at Barnes& Noble. And Aiden Thomas is an author I've been reading for some time now. So I originally took a class in college on young adult fiction, and we actually were assigned this book during the semester. Um,
I
so
can't.
I've been around for some time. First of all, how does that make you feel?
It's wild. First of all, that it was so early after it being published that you had like a class. And I think I'm still just kind of in the process of being shocked when anybody knows me or my books. So like hearing that sometimes it gets taught in classes, I'm just like, wow. And I'm like, what are we learning about? Like because another thing that I've realized after, being on social media, being tagged and things, is that my audience and my readers often pick up on stuff that I never did, and so they'll be like, "I wrote a paper on this." I was like, "Dang, yep, I did do that on purpose. You're so right. You're so smart."
That's so funny to me because it's interesting how like art can inspire art and art can inspire
Yeah,
conversations and we can learn from the things that we made. I think that's so cool. I think perspective is such a tricky thing.
yeah, you're so right. And that's the cool thing about books, right? And like how and that cycle of like inspiration, right? Because like all of my
Mhm.
I write because I was inspired by other stories, and then how that kind of just balloons out into all these really cool inspired by the same thing but being taken from completely different angles and stuff like that. So it's always fun to see like Cemetery Boys used as like a comp title for a book that's coming out or
Yes.
something. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yes, no, it's really the coolest because also sometimes I'll be talking to authors and it's funny to see how maybe some of your own favorite authors will be comped to you. I can only imagine that's a crazy
Yeah.
feeling.
Yes, all the time. I'm always like, oh my God, what? Like, especially if I'm like mentioned in the likes of like Zoraida Córdova, who I'm just an obsessive fan of. It's
Yes.
yeah, it's just wild. It's
Amazing.
the coolest thing that's ever happened to me, and every day is like the coolest day ever.
Well, that actually leads me into my next question. It's been a whole 5 years, if you can believe it, since the release of this
Yeah,
book. Just looking back on everything, how do you feel? Like, what's the last 5 years been like for you?
definitely a whirlwind, and like, and it's so weird because Cemetery Boys came out in the very throes of quarantine and COVID-19.
Yep.
So it's like the first two books that I had come out, Cemetery Boys and Lost in the Neverwoods, I wasn't allowed to like go and like meet people or like sign books in person
Wow.
because we were all in quarantine. So it was really funny, kind of like, especially when Cemetery Boys like hit the New York Times seller list. It's like, oh, everyone's reading my book, but it's only like in my computer screen. Like, so it all felt very fake, and it was weird to just only be doing virtual stuff for like the first 2 years of my career. So I was just like, this is just how it is. And then suddenly, when the Sunbearer trials came out, they're like, we're sending you on tour, and I was like, oh, and then it was horrible, but it was also kind of nice because I had these like 2.5-ish years where my readers were reading my books and being really excited, and then we finally all got to see each other in what 2022 when the Sunbearer trials came out. So it was like I had these huge groups of audiences coming to see me for the first time, and like
Oh my
how
gosh.
that like moment of like coming together within all these different communities across the United States. It that I think that was probably the most mind-blowing and jarring moment for me, was being on that first official book tour and getting to like really meet and talk to people and like really connect with my readers, for something that we've been
Oh,
locked away from each other on for so long. So it's been totally wild, and yeah, I would have never expected in my wildest dreams, because it was my wildest dreams, right? To like become a successful author. So I feel very lucky and privileged to have the career that I do. It's just amazing. It blows my mind.
that's so wild because you're so right. Especially like deep in quarantine, like
Yeah.
and suddenly all the people that I knew were just these like so many tiny people who lived in my phone. Like I
Yes,
didn't
just little
know.
profile pictures. Like
Yes. And I was like, there's a whole world out there.
Yeah,
from my screen.
totally.
And I can only imagine like how that's magnified when it's like it's because it's your own fan base that's building.
Yeah. Yeah, it's again completely utter shock and just like
That's
the
amazing.
coolest thing. It's yeah, I love it. One time I get people recognize me in public a lot because I live in Portland and Powell's, so there's like a lot of book people here, and it's
Mm.
always like in the most startling, most inopportune moments. I went to a Demi Lovato concert in like 2022, I think, and I was like in the balcony because I'm an old man and I can't stand that long. And I like had a pretzel and I was like, heck yeah, I'm so ready. And I was sitting like in the front row of the balcony. And as I'm like stuffing my mouth full of this pretzel, I can feel someone like come up to me because the aisle was right next to me. And they go, "Are you Aiden?" And I was like, oh my God, with my mouth full. And I like stood up
Oh,
and it was this young girl. And she was like,
oh,
oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And like it started like emoting at me very excitedly. And I was just like, I
oh,
cannot believe this is happening. And I was like, where did you come from? And she was like, I was in the pit and I looked up and I recognized your profile. And I was like, this is the
wow.
wildest thing that's ever happened to me. Yeah, so it was really cool. And I was like, do you want to take a picture? And she's like, oh my God, yes, please. But her hand was shaking too hard. So like there was like
Oh,
a mom sitting on the aisle who was like, can I take it for you? And she was like, yeah. And I still have that picture. I have it like on my photo frame. It was, yeah, one of the coolest and most random things to happen to me.
that is truly the greatest story ever. I
Yeah, it
love
was really
that.
fun. I was
So
in
that's
shock.
also going back to what you said about, and I didn't realize this. You didn't get to tour this book.
Yeah, I
So this
didn't.
is really like a celebration, not just for
Yeah,
5 years, but are you going to go on tour again? Or for this book, I
I'm
mean?
doing for this book. I'm doing one stop in Barnes and Noble in Roseville, California, which is actually pretty close to where I grew up. So I'm very, very excited to go there and see everyone in person. Yeah, because it's like I literally couldn't
Wow.
sign anyone's books. So what I did was that I bought book plates, which are like a themed sticker that my cover artist Marzada Bob made, and signed a bunch of those. And like that's what I gave out as like pre-orders and stuff like that. So it's
Wow.
always like so like nowadays whenever I come across someone who has a Cemetery Boys book that has that book plate in it, I know that they're like an OG fan.
Oh yeah.
When I was signing book plates for like 5 hours alone in my apartment in 2020.
That's so amazing. Yeah, I unfortunately don't have the book plate, but this is the copy that I read in
Yes.
2020. So
Yeah.
I am excited to grab my own paperback though, I will say. They're
I'm very
stunning.
excited about the paperback. They're so pretty.
They are. I'd also love if we could go back really to the beginning
Yeah.
of this whole experience for you and really just unpack this book for readers who are revisiting it or finding it now for the first
Yeah.
time. So, how did you first know you really wanted to write the story and like how did it reveal itself to you?
It's funny because Cemetery Boys is actually the second book that I sold. The first book that I
Wow.
sold was Lost in the Neverwoods, which ended up coming out after Cemetery Place. So it's funny. I sort of entered the world of publishing with a fairy tale retelling that didn't talk about race, gender, or sexuality or anything like that. Um, and then when it was time to do the like option book, which means every author in their contract whenever they sell a book, they have an option clause, which means that whatever next project you want to work on and write, your publisher gets first look at that to say yes or no. So I started, we were like on our way to copy edits for Lost in the Neverwoods, and I started just like harassing my editor, and I was like, "Hey, when can I start sending you option book ideas?" And she was like, "Oh, it's kind of early, but whenever you want." And I was like, "Great." So it's really funny because the email that I sent like 5 different ideas, and the first one was like I was like, I already have 50,000 words of this bad boy already written. Here's a full synopsis and chapter outline, and kind of like as you went down the list, the ideas got more and more vague. And Cemetery Boys was the very last pitch that I sent, and it was only like a paragraph long. And most of the sentences ended in question marks. I was like, and maybe he's queer and like also Mexican and trans. And like, what if we did this wild story? Thinking that there was no way that it was ever going to get picked up because, like, growing up and even just in the year of 2020, it was like people like me, especially with all my intersectionalities, didn't exist within media and especially trans people, because I feel like the only trans rep that we had for years upon years upon years was really horrible. It was always trans feminine people being seen as like the butt of a joke or being seen as like insidious and trying to like trick people.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I was just like, there's no way anyone's going to ever want to read or publish or pay me for this story. And I was so anxious about it that I sent it at like 5 p.m. West Coast time on a Friday. And my editor's on East Coast time. So I was like, this is a problem for Monday to be stressed about. And I can just forget about it over the weekend. And then like 2 or 3 hours later, I got an email from my editor and she was like, I want Cemetery Boys. And I was just like in utter shock. Like, it was so funny because like when I was coming up with I couldn't believe it, and I was so excited, and it was like a story that was just bursting out of me. And I remember like when I was coming up with the ideas, I was like, well, if I'm gonna if I'm gonna pitch this book, I might as well go whole hog and like just put it all out there. Which is so I was like, okay, if I wanted to talk about like a trans Latina queer boy, like what kind of story would I want to tell? And I had recently read the Brooklyn Brujas series by Zoraida Córdova. Again, a life changer of an author. Truly opened my world. And I remember that was the first time where I saw like a Mexican culture as a fantasy and in a world that we could like play with. And so to me, I was like, okay, so if I could do that, what would I want to play in? Like, what realm would I want to play in? And how like Dia de Muertos is my favorite holiday ever. It's like, it means so much to me. So I was like, all right, set it during Dia de Muertos. And if we're doing that, that means we were going to, play with spirits. And from there, I was just like, I loved Casper when I was really, really little. So the
Me
idea of having
too.
like so like having a ghost love interest, I was like, yes, that speaks to me on a deeply personal level. And I kind of just spiraled out from there. But the big excitement was like, okay, I want to show off my culture, and what kind of story can I do to best do that? And that's where Cemetery Boys came along.
It is wild to me that it was the very last pitch you sent out
Oh
of a
yeah,
list. That's
yeah,
wild. I feel like if that's the equivalent of like write down 20 ideas, throw them out and like write down a new 20, and then that's where you
yeah.
find the gold. That's so interesting to me.
Yeah, I was convinced that no one would want it. And then the fact that
Oh.
my editor and my whole publishing team has been just so supportive and kind and excited about me and my books, it's incredible.
That's so amazing. And so at the heart of this book, we have, like you said, Yadriel and Julian, two fictional characters, I'm sorry, that feel so real to me. Like I truly I feel like I spent the last 5 years with them. Since I've read this book, they've just truly I check in on them every now and again. I think about them and how they're doing. How did you really like shape them as characters and know when you found their voices?
That is such a good question. Honestly, the hardest character for me to write was Yadriel, because I
Hmm.
knew that we would be seeing the world through his point of view. And, this is a trans character, and how are we going to unpack kind of all the nuance of that identity? So I had such a hard time kind of nailing down what I wanted him to represent and how I wanted him to like take up space in the story. And like for me, when I was younger, like I did not write like this is teenage Aiden. Teenage Aiden was very angry at the world. And like that would have been like a which and like trans rage books are so valid and very important. You should check out AJ White if you haven't. Incredible books.
Yes.
But I yeah. But I wanted to have more of a not a quiet story, but more of a heart book than like an action book or a fury book. So for him nailing down his voice and what his intentions were, especially because this wasn't a character who's figuring out they're trans. This is a character who understands themselves entirely and knows that they are trans, but is trying to get their community to understand them, which is what I was seeing as a more prevalent issue popping up in like, for like Latina teens in my community. So it took a lot of nuance figuring him out, but it's funny because Julian Um, like I mentioned a second ago, I feel like people see Yadriel and they're like, that's Aiden's self-insert character. But truly, it's Julian Diaz because like he has my ADHD and he has my horrible sense of humor and like bad jokes and puns. So he was the easiest for me to write. And I don't think I've talked about this much, but Julian is a character that I had had since I was a sophomore in high school. Because
Wow.
yes, because I wrote fan fiction a lot, and I also did something even more embarrassing, which was online role playing. So it's like Dungeons and Dragons, but like in written forums. It's like it's humiliating. A lot of us did it, and no one likes to admit it. But I happily admit that I did RPing. Julian was a character that I had for how many years? Several years before I even started writing Cemetery Boys. So he was so easy. And I've been working on the sequel now, which is mostly from his point of view. So it's been really fun to like get back in his head because he's just a very easy character for me to write. So yeah, it's like so if I knew that Yadro was going to be a little bit more withdrawn and like nervous, that I needed his counterpoint in Julian to be loud and obnoxious and like not take anything. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
it was like because that's something you have to think about is like what's the push and pull. We can't just like I couldn't just give you Yads and be like, and here's Julian and here's why you're in love with him. Like you need to have reasons of why you're and also in love with Yavadale when you're reading the book. So it was a lot of
Yeah.
figuring out how those puzzle pieces of their personalities and their lives fit together and how do they bring out the best in each other.
I love that. Like you said, that push and pull between them is
Yeah.
really what makes you fall in love with them. And I love the way that you flesh them out in the book. Like one of the scenes that truly made me fall in love with Julian Diaz was when he kind of loses his temper in front of Yadriel,
Mm,
and Yadriel quickly puts him in his place.
yes.
And
Yeah.
I think we needed that scene because not everyone's perfect. Not every fictional character you love immediately from the jump, even though I will say I did love Julian from the jump. Um, but that scene really humanized him for me. Do you remember writing that?
Mm. Oh, I totally remember writing that. And that was a very intentional scene that I wrote because there's so the thing about Julian, and there's many things about him, but as a character, I really wanted to be exploring how, in traditional school settings, when you have a boy who has ADHD and who doesn't learn in the typical learning environment, they can be labeled as problem kids or like troublemakers and stuff like
Hmm.
that. So I wanted to take that idea and push against it because it's disproportionately put upon black and brown, especially black boys, and
Hmm.
have that, and then also be like, it's valid for him to have these really big and strong emotions. That's not something that we can really control, especially as a teenager. But what's important is that he recognizes that when he acts like that, he makes the people who he cares about feel unsafe, and then to also give Yads the autonomy to be like, that wasn't okay in a way that's not like yelling at him or like, berating him for it, but being like, this is a behavior that's not acceptable for me. Marita probably gets on him a little bit harder than Yads does, but yeah, it was
I
important
love
for me to kind
her.
of, yeah, she's my favorite. But it was important to kind of show what that dynamic looks like and that someone's not a bad person just because they act out or act differently than you, but to also be like, to hold your boundaries and be like, that wasn't okay, and to communicate that and to how what it's like to be receptive of that communication as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you brought up Marita because I want to know just how you came to her character. And also, do you come up with your characters first or do you outline and then do your characters?
That is such a good question. In within the world of writing, everyone is like the easiest way to write a book is to come up with a plot and then come up with characters that serve that plot. And it's true, that is easier, but I'm a gremlin and I get too excited about characters. So oftentimes I'm like, okay, here's my characters that I'm in love with. How the heck am I gonna smush them into a plot together? And then like that's where the hard part is. So and then for Marita, it's funny because like back in like 2020 when I was doing interviews for the first time, people would be like, "Oh, like is Maritza modeled after like one of your friends growing up or something like that. And the truth was, when I was a teen, having all these feelings and feeling so different from everyone else, I didn't think that anyone could love me so unconditionally, to love me even, despite air quotes being trans and like different. But so she is definitely my wish fulfillment character. And she's definitely my sister now is very much my Marita, who will like go to bat for me and is like quick to jump and is like, I'll fight. And I'm just like, we actually don't need to. Like, so Marita is like the person, the friend that I really wanted when I was a teenager to like be an ally, yes, but like, what does that look like? And for me, and like what I was trying to show in Marita was like, how do you be a good ally to, your trans friends and siblings, is to like be able to stand up for them, to take up that space so that they don't have to, but also to take their lead. So, like when Yads was shared with Marita that he was trans, but didn't want to start using a different name or didn't want to start using pronouns until he was ready. Marita respected that. Marita didn't say anything until Yaz gave the okay. So for me, that she's like a really important character in that way. And she's also just really funny and like and like such an Aquarius, and like they have one brain cell between the three of them, and it is Marita's brain cell.
I'd also throw in the brain cells of Donatello and Michelangelo.
Yes, I love them so much. They're actually modeled or based on my sister's dog. Her name's Miley, and she is a pit bull that is the size of a small horse. And when she gets really excited, she smacks herself in the face with her own tail. So that was the inspiration for dear Michelangelo and Donatello.
Oh, I love them. I love them so much. And also, I will say, I think we all need a Marita in our life, and if we don't have one,
So
I think we need to be the Marita for other
yes,
people.
I agree completely.
Yeah. She is such a special character. She's such an important character to me. I really love her.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
You also have your MFA in creative writing from Mills College.
Yeah.
How did that really like help shape you as a writer, and did like any of that experience directly come through in Cemetery Boys?
I actually hated grad school. I had a terrible time. So I wouldn't say that grad school did a whole lot for me in my writing career, other than making me question whether I should be doing it for a really long time.
Oh no.
Which is fine and okay. Like I took courses, I wrote a lot of like good short stories that got published. That was really cool. But in terms of like, how did I learn to like write? Honestly, it was by doing online role playing and fan fiction as a teenager. And then it was actually after I graduated, after I had my MFA, I started like reading craft books. And I discovered Jessica Brody, who wrote Save the Cat Writes a Novel. She also, like a year ago, released a version that's young adult specific. And I have like these stack of writing craft books that really taught me how to become a better writer, especially between like Cemetery Boys and like Espiritu, that's going to come out in about a year. I feel like I've really improved due to those craft lessons. And I also I'm part of Jessica Brody's online course, and it's so nice because I'm a very visual learner. So it's nice to watch a video of someone like talk you through craft and give you examples and kind of explain the concepts. And that really kind of broke my brain open in a really wonderful way. And now I feel like it's easier to plot my stories and have more depth of like character, but also like themes and like what I'm actually trying to say. I remember the first time I turned in the first draft of Cemetery Boys, I went to a seminar that Maggie Stiefvater was putting on. And I went, and again, my mind got broken open. And this was like right after I was out of grad school. And I remember just being like, this is so genius and so smart. I did none of this in Cemetery Boys. And I remember I got home and it was like 10 o'clock at night. And I texted my agent and I was like, Jennifer, I just went to the seminar and I don't think I have a personal truth or emotional core in Cemetery Boys. I was like, I'm freaking out. My poor agent, who has to deal with like texts and calls like that a lot from me, was like, Aiden, you absolutely have all of those in it because I read it. Also, this is the first draft, so a lot is going to be changed and made better. So something she always tells me that's very grounding is you're worried, but you're well. So that is a mantra that I also kind of just repeat for myself. But yeah, I remember being totally freaked out. But but yeah, honestly, I think higher education is a scam. I'll just go ahead and say that, especially if you want to become a writer. You do not need to have a bachelor's. You do not need to have an MFA. There's so many other more accessible ways to learn about craft and writing, like
Yeah.
books and like those
Yes.
online courses that you can write a Cemetery Boys and not have gone to school for it at all. There's just so many more accessible resources, and I think that's why I really love like I'm doing Lambda literary workshop. I've also done Tin House
Hmm.
this year. I love being able to teach workshops and like help people on their craft without it having to be, behind the blockade of higher education.
I love that you said that because so, I mean, we talk to so many authors on this podcast, and sometimes people will have pretty big feelings about whether or not you should get an MFA if you need to. And so I'm
Yeah.
always interested in asking because truly, I mean, my own belief too is that there's no wrong way to create art if we're the ones creating
Oh my
it.
God. Yes.
Um, and writing can just be is so accessible. I mean, for so many reasons, whether it's fiction writing, it's poetry or journaling. I mean, it's such a great tool, and I don't think you need a
Yes.
fancy degree to tell you you can do it or not.
Yeah, like truly you don't. Like I would even recommend against it unless like you want to go into teaching higher education, then yes,
Yeah,
go and get your MFA. But in general, no. Like just
yeah,
yeah, just write and if you need help, do craft books and stuff like that.
absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
I will say though, it's so funny to me that you didn't think you had like a heart or personal
I
core in this
know.
story because I mean with my fancy degree that I used to learn about this book, I can tell you that you do have that in there.
No, thank you. Yeah, I would truly was in like a full blown panic mode. It was pretty bad.
Something that really interests me about this book too is that well, whenever I read speculative stories, I'm always interested in seeing how authors will kind of handle like the rules of certain supernatural things. Like I love to see how
Yeah.
vampire stories are like which traditions and rules we're taking from that, which we kind of will ignore or make our own. And so
Yeah.
I just wonder in this book how you figured all of that out with Julian as a ghost. Like, did you literally think, okay, what are his ghostly rules? Like, what is his ghostly curriculum he's following here?
This is such a good thing to bring up because it's a very important thing to do when you're writing a book. And I think like the first three books that I wrote, I was just like, I don't have to have rules for my magic systems. And my poor editor kept being like, Aiden, please just pick hard or soft magic and we can go from there. So for when I was figuring out Julian, at first I did that thing where I was just like, well, this is what I want it to be. And then I went to go see how that would play out, and I was like, that's too strict. So what I kind of did was it took a couple of drafts to really figure out what we wanted those rules to be because you have to stick to them. And also the rules need to not get in the way of like plot. So when I was coming up with those rules for Julian, it's like he can't touch Yadriel, but maybe if he tries really hard, it's like a little bit he can do it. Because I knew I wanted them to like kiss. I don't think that's a giveaway, but I didn't know
Yeah,
like what that would look like, right? And so I had to
yeah.
like do all these mental gymnastics to be like, well, okay, so but if he did this and then this rule, but actually, because he's been practicing, of course, so it's like he can do this one thing. But yeah, it was a lot of because you write the book and you're just like, I just want to write it. Someone else fix the problems, and it's like your editor will tell you what the problems are, but you're truly the one who has to fix them. So I remember really going back and forth because it was like, well, if I have this rule, I'm losing out on this moment. But if I want this moment, I have to change this rule. So it was a lot of work. And I remember I ended up having to like write a list of those rules to like keep to the side of my screen while I was typing and like editing to make sure that I didn't like mess up.
I love hearing that though because the even though it took like a lot of work, that work really comes through because the actual magic system and the story that you've like fleshed out here is so grounded. Like it truly, it
Yeah.
feels so, obviously it's an incredible book, but so like every detail is so thought out. And that's one of the things I really love about this book.
Yeah, right. Because we don't, not only do we have like the ghost rules, but we also have the whole magic system rules. And it's funny because
Exactly.
it's like when when Cemetery Boys first came out, I would get a lot of questions of be like, how did you come up with this rules of magic and like the spirit releasing and stuff like that? And it was like I cheated. Like I took my cultural beliefs and practices and I just gave them like a very literal output. Like, we believe that during Dia de Muertos, if you have the bright orange color of marigolds plus their very strong appley scent, attracts our loved ones, the spirits of our loved ones, to come back and celebrate with us. And it's like, that's what I did. Here's a marigold arc, and here comes the spirits passing right on through. So I think that's been a fun thing to kind of share with people because, to me, Mexican culture and magic are intrinsically related. And I think that's something that's so beautiful about our culture and our practices is that it's very magical and it's beautiful and it's colorful. And so when I got to write Cemetery Boys, it was really like I am showing off all of my favorite parts of this holiday and this celebration.
Oh, that's so special. That's so special because obviously this book is a piece of you, but it's even more of a piece of you because it truly is tied in with so many things about you, like just your culture
Yeah.
in itself. I love that. That's so beautiful.
Yeah, it was really like I wrote the first draft of that book in 6 weeks. Like that's how excited I was to
Wow.
write it. I'll never do it again. It was horrible. I was so tired after. Like, but it was I mean magical. Writing Cemetery Boys has been a magical experience, the whole process of it.
Another scene that really stood out to me is when Julian is telling Yadriel that there's no way he's the
Mm,
first trans Bruhix. He also won't be the last. Can you tell me a little bit
yeah.
about writing that scene and like truly what that meant to you? Because that gets me every time I read it.
Yeah, I mean, the truth of the matter is that all cultures were very queer before colonization, and that's especially true for like Mesoamerican cultures.
Mhm.
Um, and I think in that moment, for Cemetery Boys, it's funny because it kind of already feels a little bit dated in the most wonderful way possible. And that we have way more kids who are feeling much more comfortable coming out at a younger age, especially in East Los Angeles. Like that scape has already shifted a little bit. And so for me, I know when I was younger, it was kind of you're just feeling very isolated and you are scared to ask questions and you're kind of hiding from not only yourself but your friends and your community. And so for me in that moment of Julian being like, okay, let's be realistic, like there's no way that there hasn't been a trans like a brujo before. Like that's just BS. And it's true, we have trans adjacent gods in Aztec and Maya mythology. Um, and I really just wanted to push back on that idea and kind of break Yads's brain open a little bit because he has been told by his community and his family, you're different and we don't know what to do with you. When the truth is, like, people like him have been existed throughout the entire existence of these people. And I think that that's it kind of breaks your brain open. I remember
Mhm.
realizing when I was younger that like trans people existed like even in the 70s. And I was like, there's no way. But it's like, yeah, no, from the beginning of time, there have been queer people. So that
Yes.
moment I think was really fun and special. And for me, it was important to be coming from Yads's love interest, Julian, who sees and understands and loves Yads for exactly who he is without question. So for me, that was like a really big moment, not only for Yads and his identity, but for Yads and seeing Julian seeing him, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. That scene always gets me because it's so true of so many things. I mean, it
Yeah.
reminds me of that James Baldwin quote, you think your pain and heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world, but then you read. That's exactly why we read.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Oh, quoting James Baldwin at me, I'll just start crying. Like,
Well, I mean, I'm not trying to make you cry, but I mean
no,
that's
it's so
why this
wonderful.
book, yeah, that's why this book is so important. I mean, obviously, it's such an incredible just romance. if that's what you're
Yeah.
going for, if that's what you want this book for, you're getting that from this book. If you're going into this book wanting an incredible fantasy, you're getting this book. But also,
Yeah.
so many kids and so many just people can get so much out of this book and know that even like in 100 years from now, someone might pick up this book and be like, even in 2020, they were dealing with the same things. I mean, I hope not, but
Yeah. Right. It's funny that you say that because there is a moment in the book that I felt like I was talking to parents and like family members,
Mhm.
and it's when God, I think it's in like the second chapter even when Yad's Lita accidentally misgenders him and uses his
Right.
dead name. And I remember that being like a whole thing that a lot of people were talking about because on the page, I never say what Yadz's dead name is. I don't know what it is. It's not my business. That's not what's important. What was important in that scene is to show the internal agony that trans people go through when someone, especially someone that they love, misgenders or, those microaggressions and dead names and stuff like that. So for me, having that moment, it was like, this is what it looks like when you let these microaggressions slip through. This is what it feels like for the person that you love when they hear this. And for me, I was definitely like directly talking to parents who were like, well, I just don't understand. It's like, you don't necessarily have to understand, but you have to be respectful and you have to care for this person that you love.
Yes, no, absolutely. That really was such a powerful moment in the book just because like you said, the agony that Yadriel feels. I mean, it really
Yeah.
comes through on the page.
Yeah. Cause it's like, it doesn't matter what his dead name is. And I think that's what people got really excited about. They're like, well, what is this? It's like, no, it doesn't matter. That's not the point of the
That's
scene.
the whole point. Is
Yeah.
that
The whole point is that
it's
it does not
dead, it's
matter.
gone. We don't need it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I'm also so interested in how so many authors, I think, and not just authors, but also movies, the horror genre can be used as like a vessel
Oh
for
yeah.
queer stories a lot.
Oh
I
my
mean,
god.
we
Yeah.
see it with Andrew Joseph White, like we were talking about
Yes.
earlier, and I'm thinking of like Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, the
Yeah.
new V.E. Schwab,
Yeah.
or like movies like Jennifer's Body, or like I Saw the TV Glow, like the Matrix trilogy is literally a trans allegory. Like,
Yes.
why do
Literally.
you like? Yeah, no, and it blows my mind that people don't realize that. But anyway, why do you think we look toward like the supernatural and horror and genre
Hmm.
fiction to tell these queer stories?
I think what's interesting and fun about it, especially within the YA realm, because we can really enter all those genres that we want, is
Yeah.
that it's just a different angle of unpacking either like what the terror or is like or like the body horror. Because like, something that anti-trans folks like to bring up all the time is like how we mutilate our bodies. And so it's like being able to kind of take that power back and be like, yeah, here's these like grotesque scars with horror, body horror, and like, limbs coming out of me. It's like, for me, I think specifically in the horror genre, it's about getting power and control back.
Hmm.
Um, and and I think that that's really a fun way to play with it. And I also think that magic and queerness are also just inherently interlinked because like, oh, I have a secret that I can't share with other people and like, you know what I mean? So it's like between fantasy and horror, I think that those are so ripe to like be exploring trans experiences, both the highs and the really low lows that can come along with it. And again, kind of coming back to that rage, it's very empowering. And I love it. It's so good.
It's I truly it's one of my favorite, I'm gonna say trope for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Because there's like you said, there's so much budding potential there, which is why
Yes.
I loved Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V. Schwab. I
Yeah.
mean, yes, three lesbian vampires. Yeah, I will take
You're
that.
like, this is everything. Thank you so much.
Okay. So here's a fun question for you. This book is essentially being reborn into an entirely different world than we were in 2020. We talked a little bit about
Yeah.
how that is too. So if you were to walk into Barnes and Noble and see someone grab this book off a table, who's your ideal reader? Who do you want picking up this book?
Who do I want picking up this book? Um, I mean, I think ideally like preteens. like before they start getting into the horrible mess that is puberty, especially when you have to go through it twice when you go on hormone replacement therapy. I think that's what I want. It's like before the world can like beat them down, and especially for trans and queer kids, before society can convince them that this isn't a community that they should be a part of, when it is their community. I think that would probably be a really good time. Like 13, I think, would be a 13-year-old closeted teenager who isn't even sure if they're queer or trans yet, but usually if they're even wondering, it's a pretty good sign. Like if I could get Cemetery Boys into those hands, I think that would be the ideal situation. Like, let them have fun, let them see that they deserve to take up space, that they deserve to be a hero, but also that they deserve to be loved for exactly who they are, without any turmoil or suffering around it, if that makes sense.
It absolutely makes sense. That was beautifully said. And one more thing that I want to ask you before I let you go, that you've been so generous with your time. Thank you
Of
again.
course.
Um, you revealed a stunning cover for something very exciting that you've talked about a little bit so far for Cemetery
Yeah.
Boys fans back in December, I believe it was, when you revealed the cover.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit about what's coming next for these characters?
Yeah, so I am writing a sequel, and it's called Cemetery Boys 2 Espiritu, which, like the number two, I was trying really hard to have a meme title, like a Fast and the Furious type title. And like, I kept going back and forth with my editor. Like, I was like, well, here's, because like, when I turned in, oh God, when I turned in the first draft of Espiritu, the title on the manuscript was Two Cemeteries, Two Boys, just like as a placeholder.
I was going to say that, and then I decided against it. Two
Oh
cemetery,
no,
two boy.
that's 100% what I did. And they're like, oh, haha, very funny, Aiden. I had sent them like a joke list because I'm here for goofs and gags. They came back with a list that I didn't like. I sent them another list. They're like, no. And then eventually, it wasn't even my editor, my publisher, Gene Feiwel of Feiwel and Friends, was like, just let him have a meme title. So that's how we got Espiritu. And I'm really excited about it. I just turned in the latest draft, I think like 2 weeks ago. So it's still pretty fresh in my brain. Because you have to read your book 85,000 times after writing the first draft, which it seems rude to me, but whatever. And yeah, she was finally just like, yeah, just let him have it. So I'm very excited about that. So Espiritu. And that one, it is going to be mostly from Julian's POV. I haven't shared this yet, but there are some snippets of Yads, because we realized we need Yads. Everyone loves Yads.
Oh yeah.
And also his perspective has a lot of information that Julian just doesn't. So I was like, all right, we need to supplement this a bit. But it basically takes place like a month and a half after the first Cemetery Boys book. And it's you get to meet and really get to know Julian's found family of like Omar, Rocky, Flocka, and Luca and his brother. So there's a lot of that. They are there for mostly the entire thing. And I'm trying to figure out how to talk about this without Cemetery Boy spoilers, but Julian is a little changed
Okay.
after the events of the first Cemetery Boys book. And he is seeing these dark spots on people's chests, these big gaping holes that have like shadows and like green coming out of them. And he's also seeing what he thinks are spirits but aren't spirits. And he's being haunted by something or someone. And so the mystery is figuring out what that is. And we also have a brand new character who is going to be in this series, our first non-binary Bruja. And they're going to have they're going to play a big role in the story. And I am so excited for people to read it.
I cannot wait to read that. I need it now, please.
Well, it's been such a long time coming, because after Cemetery Boys came out, my publisher 3 times tried to pay me for a sequel, and I told them no, because I didn't have I knew how important Cemetery Boys was to so many people that I didn't want to just write a sequel to for a cash grab. I was like, if you're going to write a sequel, it has to be able to stand up. It has to like have some weight and importance to it. And I remember finally coming up with the idea and like being like hit, like I was struck by lightning, and like texting my my agent, because I text her a lot at weird times of night. And I was like, oh my God, I finally have an idea. And she was like, okay, let's put a proposal together. So yeah, I'm really, really excited to continue playing in this world with these characters and to come back to it. It was so much fun. So much fun.
Oh, I'm so excited. Cemetery Boys is out now. Go grab your copy and fall in love with these characters just like I did. Aiden, thank you so much for joining us in Port Over.
Yes, thank you so much. This was literally so much fun. It was such a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you for listening. Port Over is a Barnes & Noble production. To help other readers find us, please rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.